temperatures.
Thank you, Mike. We have broken down the types of precipitation for you through the afternoon, just to give you an idea at a glance of how things are shaping up. So rain across southern Ontario, including in Barrie, and we're not looking at a lot, 5 to 10 millimeters of light rain. There may be some enhancement, though, around Georgian Bay. And then this freezing line, and that's really the concern, from Sault Ste. Marie down toward North Bay and Ottawa and even Montreal by this afternoon. There's actually some concerns for the freezing rain in the Ottawa Valley and then snowfall over northern Ontario. That freezing line, though, does dip further south through the overnight and for the early start of tomorrow, maybe even a brief changeover to snow in Ottawa. But notice how Toronto and the GTA stay in the rain, although there's a mixing line that gets awfully close to Barrie by tomorrow morning. So for those of you traveling that corridor on the 400, there may be some icing, especially in the northern edge of that toward Lake Simcoe. We talked about a bit of enhancement again with regard to the to Georgian Bay and parts of Lake Huron, but then the low pressure system departs. Not really seeing much for breaks in the cloud cover until about Thursday, Friday. That's when we'll see the sun returning. So lots of cloud cover and gray conditions really for the next couple of days. So a look ahead to Wednesday again. I'm Sheryl Plouffe from the Weather Network. Thank you for being here. We are Canada's #1 source for complete and accurate weather, and we'll get you set up with what's going on. Actually, let's look back to yesterday. How warm did it get in Toronto? Well, at Pearson, we recorded 3.8 degrees. Not too bad. Downtown at 4.5. Not too bad. Wasn't the warmest spot in the nation, though, St. John's, Newfoundland. Thank you, Kevin. Well, the low pressure system is right here. I mean, we could analyze this as being two different centers of low pressure, but for the intent of keeping this simple, we've got it analyzed here as one. And essentially what southern Ontario is in the warm sector of this low pressure system as it continues to move through. Now, Ottawa and Montreal awfully close to the freezing mark, and there is potential for some freezing rain in those regions, and that will be the case through the afternoon, but even more so overnight for Montreal at least, and then Ottawa may change over briefly to some snowfall. I think the biggest concern in Ottawa for freezing rain would be more so this afternoon. But notice how Toronto is staying in the rain. We're still in the green here across these areas. It's not terribly warm, but 4 or so degrees is warm enough to keep us in the sense of rain. So this afternoon, 5 in Toronto, again, light winds. We're looking at rainfall amounts of anywhere between 5 and at most 15 millimeters of rain. A little bit of an enhancement actually further to the north, so I would suspect that the totals may be a little higher there. This is not an epic rain. There's also some indication that with next week, with regard to Christmas, so midweek next week and beyond into next weekend, there could be some interesting developments with regard to some more winter weather and colder temperatures. Of course, we'll go into detail on that in your Long Ranger. But for
the studio.
I love it when we meet people on the street who are opinionated and stick to what they believe in. I like that. Thank you so much, Kevin. And we have had some fog as of late. Chris St. Clair was bringing us all of those different types of fog. I guess we could argue that yesterday we had advection fog in addition to radiation fog for the most part across southern Ontario. Today it's all about the rain. Light rain, 5 to 10 millimeters of rain expected. And then this freezing line here is draped from Montreal through Ottawa up toward North Bay and back into Sault Ste. Marie for the afternoon. As we get into the evening and overnight, that line does drop awfully close to Barrie. Certainly Orillia is in that, but Toronto is expected to stay in the form of rain. It's warm enough for rain as we get through tomorrow morning. But Ottawa and Montreal, some icing conditions. Bit of a concern heading into tomorrow morning and through this afternoon in the Ottawa Valley. So there goes the low pressure system. Off it goes. Now notice we're really seeing still a lot of cloud cover. Thursday is expected to be mostly cloudy, and then by Friday we'll begin to see the sun again. So it's one of those very dreary, dark, kind of lingering clouds type of days actually for the next couple of days as the system departs.
C-band.
Well, weather-wise, Chrissy, it hasn't been all that bad for outdoor running, especially considering that it's December. And yesterday, Pearson International recording 3.8 degrees. We also had St. Catharines at 4, and that's been the case today as well, as we have seen some fog in areas across central and southwestern Ontario. Now we're going to be concerned throughout this afternoon for the potential of freezing rain right through Ottawa and eventually for Montreal back up into North Bay. Right now we have the freezing rain concerns over northern Ontario, but that's likely to switch as the afternoon progresses. Might see some warnings for this a little bit later on in the day. And then the transition in Timmins back over to some snowfall and maybe even briefly in Ottawa some snow before everything tapers off. That freezing line does move down into the afternoon for Ottawa, and then in the evening time more so for Montreal. So the temperatures, well, they're staying fairly mild enough in Toronto to continue for rainfall, 5 to 10 millimeters of rain. It's light rain. It's not a heavy rain necessarily. We've been dealing with fog, drizzle, low cloud. We're not going to see a lot of sun for the next couple of days, and the forecast even this evening. So off goes the low pressure system. What we don't see here is the fact that there's still a lot of cloud cover set over southern Ontario on Thursday. Then we get into Friday and Saturday, we'll start to see some brighter skies. We'll see that here in this 7-day forecast. Notice how on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you saw this in your locals too, and wondered why are we going to be seeing the sun all of a sudden. Wednesday might even see some mixing briefly, and then back into 0 down to the freezing mark on Friday, Saturday. But notice how it's still quite a bit cloudy, and then brighter skies for the early part of next week. But that wouldn't happen until overnight and tomorrow morning, as this freeze line, so essentially where the snow and rain could mix in, and maybe even some freezing rain in this red zone through North Bay, Ottawa, Montreal, and even back into Sault Ste. Marie, it's going to drop down closer to Barrie by the morning hours. Now, Toronto expected to stay in rain, warm enough. It's not terribly warm, but warm enough to see rain, 4 degrees. And then Ottawa and Montreal, again, the concern is for freezing rain through the afternoon and through the overnight. So we haven't seen any watches or warnings there yet, but there could be some later. Notice that there's still a lot of cloud cover. It takes a while to scour all of that out. That will happen throughout the day on Thursday, but it's really not likely until Friday that we will see the sun returning. This is a look at the historical chance of a white Christmas, being defined as 2 centimeters of snow on the ground at 7 a.m. on December 25th. That's the official definition. This is, again, the historical average of the coast. We don't see as much of a chance. The probability is only 11% in Vancouver, and we did not have a white Christmas there yesterday. In fact, last year, I should say. I think Vancouver was the only major city in our country last year that did not have a white Christmas. Everywhere else did. Snowfall south of Whitehorse and through the Haines Road region, northwest BC and southern Yukon. So we do have a snowfall warning in place for these areas. But for the most part, again, it's really dry and it's cold. I mean, the temperatures today in Whitehorse would be about -5, and then the overnight low dipping down to a wind chill of -20. The BC coast, there is some rainfall on the way. We'll see widespread showers throughout the day today and tomorrow, a little bit of a break, and then we get more rainfall coming in on Thursday. Thursday, break. Saturday, rain again. That's what's going to be happening for the BC coast as we look ahead. Now, in terms of the amounts, through Wednesday, the highest totals, and by that we mean up to 30 millimeters of rain around Tofino and then back into Vancouver and Victoria, really not seeing more than about 5 millimeters of rain. Temperatures are still really cold, -12 this afternoon in Winnipeg, and we're going to be looking actually at not much of a wind chill necessarily. If we get any at all, it'd be more in the mid-teens, maybe -17 at best. And then we see a slight moderation in our temperatures for Edmonton in the next few days, and more of a -6, and then Regina seeing some big improvements for you as well. So again, we do have a couple of different low pressure systems arriving for the BC coast, but they're really not able to cross over the Rockies very well at this point. Vancouver, you've got a lot of rain in your forecast. Looking forward to that one, Nate. Thank you so much. We have a low pressure system that is on the way, bringing yet again more rainfall for most. Now, if you're in Fredericton and points north, you're likely to be running into some frozen precipitation. But for the time being, we have our low pressure system just offshore here of Newfoundland, off of the Avalon. In fact, we've had some wind warnings, and some winds have been really strong there, but that's going to be easing. And then coming in is the next low pressure system. Again, largely this is rainfall. I think the freeze line is pretty much around Fredericton and back towards, say, north of Moncton, and then north of that, a much better chance of picking up snowfall. But Fredericton at this point, it looks to be kind of a sloppy mix of both rain and snow. In Halifax, about 15 to 30 millimeters of rain, probably the similar totals for Prince and Queens County PEI, and then back into Newfoundland, 5 to 15 millimeters of rain expected. Again, we talked about snow, and in some cases it will be a high snow total of about 15 centimeters of snow. We go to Ontario, and it's rainfall across the south. Thanks, Kevin. He says, oh, no, let's not get crazy. Let's not bring snow into the equation. We have rain across the south. There is a freeze line, though, from Sault Ste. Marie through North Bay through the afternoon, Ottawa and Montreal, getting into possibly some freezing rain. And then north of that is snowfall. And it's a significant snow total. In places like Timmins, 10 to 15 centimeters of fresh snow on the ground by tomorrow late day. And then across southern Ontario, it's not until you get into Barrie and Owen Sound that you really pick up the best chance of some enhancement from Georgian Bay and Lake Huron in the form of likely some wet snow. And we have had in many areas fog in the last couple of days, with fog advisories in place still for Alberta, especially along the Saskatchewan border. The advisories in Saskatchewan proper have ended, but nevertheless Calgary is included in that. And then northern Ontario, we've had some issues for fog and also for portions of Midwestern Ontario up into the Dundalk Highlands like Mount Forest. The threat of fog, at least for the time being, and the perfect recipe for that is to have saturated air at the surface and to see some, well, cool air at the surface overrun by warmer air over top of it and some light winds. You can't have winds and have fog at the same time. At theweathernetwork.com, so you can actually filter them by province and be able to check out webcams from really anywhere across the country. So we do have some snowfall up in Timmins, Kapuskasing as well, and then you get into the greens, and that is rainfall. And it's a cold rain for the most part. We have freezing rain concerns as well with this whole system, not only in Ontario, but into adjacent portions of Quebec with advisories in place, and that freezing line is going to come down into Ottawa by later this afternoon. So tomorrow, again, we could be looking at some decent snowfall, and across southern Ontario, largely rain. But until you move further north toward Georgian Bay and Lake Huron, you run into the potential for snow. Let's go to Nate right now. Thank you, Nate, with some very strong northeasterly winds in St. John's and for the Avalon today and through this afternoon, but that eases slowly, but it eases through the overnight. Then we see a period of calmer weather until the winds pick up in strength again from the southeast. Initially for the Nova Scotia coast here, it's going to be some strong winds coming in with our low pressure system, and rainfall is on the way. Halifax, we're looking at between, say, 15 and 30 millimeters of rain. And then as you get up into Fredericton, there's likely going to be some rain-snow mix moving through that area, and then snowfall developing to the north throughout the day on Wednesday.
It's an information.
Hi, Deb. Well, you know what? The fog advisory is the worst thing we've seen over the last few days. And yes, it does reduce visibility at times, but no big snowstorms on the horizon, as you just mentioned. So we have fog advisories in place. Now, in terms of temperatures, it's still cold. Keep in mind, in many cases, this fog has been freezing fog, and the temperatures in Medicine Hat are really not expected to be out of that minus 11 range throughout the afternoon. In fact, minus mid-teens once again tonight. Abbotsford 6, Nanaimo 7. Rainy pattern once again for BC. At times some breaks, yes, but Thursday and then another spell on Saturday of rainfall on the way, and the higher totals will be on the west side of Vancouver Island. Then in Vancouver and Victoria, expected to see, at least with this round, less than about 10 millimeters of rain. So no big rains. And the impact that that's having on the avalanche danger rating from Avalanche Canada is that it's, well, there is really not much of one. It's a moderate risk at this time, but we may see some changes on that by next week as the pattern changes. Yeah, they're still a little bit cold in Saskatchewan, but Manitoba is colder still, in Winnipeg at minus 12. So we definitely have some cold air in place. In fact, yesterday in Winnipeg, we had the temperature sitting around minus 9. And there was some light snow in Winnipeg where there was a bus crash, as you can imagine, with slippery conditions. Across southern Manitoba, it's cold. Northern Ontario, some snowfall, some rain showers south of the freezing line, which is going to be making its way further south toward North Bay, Ottawa by later in the afternoon, and Montreal by tomorrow morning may see some freezing rain as well. That's all that's left at Northern Ontario. But once we get down into Georgian Bay and Lake Huron, it's possible that with colder air settling in, we may see some snowfall here, but we're not expecting that to be the case in Toronto or the GTA. It will stay mild enough to be rainfall. And we look to Timmins, and there's some snowfall in place and some... Thank you, Mike. The low pressure system that's moving across southern Ontario is responsible for kicking up the waves and the wind, and this is all moving across, and with it a warm front. So essentially south of this red line is where it's warm enough, the warm sector, to see rain and showers. But along that line, there's a risk for freezing rain. That will be the case in Ottawa this afternoon and North Bay as well, and even Sault Ste. Marie. back into the eastern Superior shores. The winds, though, are going to not be so much of a concern then as we get into the closer to the weekend as high pressure builds in once again. So rainfall across southern Ontario and north, actually some enhancement toward Georgian Bay and Lake Huron, but in northern Ontario, we'll see a transition over to some snowfall. And we did, for a time, have some freezing rain warnings. Those have since expired. And now we have advisories in place from Chibougamau through Rouen, Noranda, Val-d'Or, and through western Quebec. Now, over northern Ontario, and then possibly a transition in Georgian Bay and through midwestern Ontario, Owen Sound, I'm thinking Barrie, Collingwood, possibly seeing some snow, but not more than 5 centimeters expected. Back to yesterday, and we still have some really cold temperatures hanging on to that, at least for the time being, with wind chills in the minus mid-teens. And then a slow moderation is starting tomorrow, especially in Alberta and Saskatchewan as well. BC, rainfall. We're back into the rainy pattern, and that will continue into the early part of next week.